Good morning. I am Lynn Fritz. I want to welcome you to the 2015 Martin Luther King bell ringing ceremony. And our first order of business, please, is to silence the cell phones. It's an extraordinary moment in time as we consider the life and work of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. and to know that others are gathering across our nation, around the world. Some in community gatherings, others in their private homes. But we honor this occasion by coming together as a community and to be able to contemplate the significance of his life and look some 50 years later at its impact, its growing impact. So let's think back to 1986. That was the first bell ringing and the first national observance of Dr. Martin Luther King's legacy. In 1984, Ronald Reagan created a commission that was to put together a ceremony to honor him that was to last for 5 years, and it could be renewed for 5 additional years. The person appointed to that commission was the wife of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. And as we may know now as history, it went long beyond those 10 years. The first ringing was held in Philadelphia at the Independence Hall. And the sponsors of that commission served as a sponsor. And that holiday is still observed by the ringing of the Liberty Bell as a symbol of freedom and justice. And here we are in our community partaking in that same ceremony. What's interesting is to notice too the life, work, and advocacy of our beloved Mrs. Isaac Loeb, who inspired the consciousness of this community and advocated for recognition of this holiday endlessly until it became a reality. So as you look around the room, and I invite you to do so, community leaders, elected officials, we pause, take time to recognize and honor this important and significant person. This photograph here, you might recognize. How fitting, isn't it? I encourage you to take a personal pilgrimage to Washington, D.C., to the Martin Luther King Memorial. I had that privilege this last September, and I stood exactly where he stood. It's marked. It's so significant in the consciousness and history of our nation. It's a wonderful opportunity. So because we have the group that we have, if anyone goes too long, they get the bell. Because we have a whole list of dignitaries. So I'm going to invite us just for a moment to close our eyes, if you're comfortable. We take a breath in, recognizing the life and legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. I invite you to open your eyes. And I'm going to welcome to the podium, honoring and recognizing the Shasta County Multicultural Advisory Board, who is presenting this event this morning, Doris Bond.
On behalf of the advisory board, we'd like to welcome all of you, and it's a wonderful gathering. For a long time, I was involved at the center, and we did the Martin Luther King Day, and I was usually back at the center cooking, and I didn't get to come to this meeting. And so the last few years I've come, and it's wonderful. I wouldn't miss it for anything. I get to see people that I haven't seen for a whole year that are here, and we get to meet and greet and know that we're still here and we're still backing the ideals of Martin Luther King. So on behalf of the board, I want to thank you for coming today. And then, just as an aside, I think most of you know that Isaac is in an assisted living place. And so as we go from the courthouse and march to the center later on today, it's right by where she is. And she's going to be out in front, and we're going to take the march around, and the people in the march can meet and greet her. So anyways, I hope to see some of you there. I know some of you will have to be at work and have other responsibilities, but welcome. Thank you for getting up so early in the morning and coming out with to be with us.
And we have Pam Hughes representing the Shasta County citizens advocating for respect.
I'm representing SCAR, Shasta County Citizens Advocating Respect. Our organization, like Martin Luther King Jr., whom we honor today, have broadened our focus from being against racism to advocating respect. In his last year, hoping to reshape our country into a beloved community, Dr. King spoke eloquently and early against the Vietnam War. He began organizing a Poor People's Campaign and was assassinated while supporting the sanitation workers' strike for better working conditions and a decent wage for an honest day's work. SCAR has changed our name from Shasta County Citizens Against Racism, chosen in response to a racial incident in Caldwell Park in 1988, to our current name, Advocating Respect, as we also address a wider variety of concerns in our community. In honor of Isaac Lowe, our matriarch of civil rights activism in Reading, SCAR awards scholarships to Shasta College students who will advance Dr. King's dream in the future. At our annual Civil Rights and Social Justice Awards dinner each November, we recognize local citizens who are now advancing those dreams. In 26 years, we have honored 56 of our friends and neighbors. Our youth award this year went to Blake Bennett, a 6th grade boy whose uncompromising belief in equality led him to raise the funds necessary to ensure that all his 5th grade classmates, even those whose families could not afford the fees, enjoyed the adventures at Whiskeytown Environmental School. Cody Bear Bodner, a young Native American with multiple tribal associations and a lifelong resident of Shasta Lake City, is now the Shasta County Deputy Sheriff. He received our Law Enforcement Award for his service in his community, protecting all citizens and providing a positive role model for youth, especially young Native Americans. Ann Muir Corin, who's with us today, pastor at Pilgrim Church, was awarded the Civil Rights and Social Justice Award this year for her many activist efforts, especially her leadership in planning the Reading Homeless Day Resource Center to provide a place to be for our homeless citizens. These are some of our local heroes. May we all, at this bell ringing celebrating the life of Martin Luther King Jr., dedicate ourselves to being Shasta County citizens, advocating respect, living his legacy, fulfilling his dreams, and creating the beloved community Dr. King envisioned. Thank you.
The President of the American Civil Liberties Union here locally, Don Yost.
When I was a college student, I actually had the opportunity to see Dr. King in person, although it was in a huge auditorium. I didn't wasn't face to face with him. But at that event, I, of course, had no idea that events would happen subsequently, and I would actually be speaking at an event honoring him. But during his short lifetime, Dr. King worked for the rights of minorities. His initial concern was to obtain justice for African Americans, but his message grew to include poor people, whatever their color. The American Civil Liberties Union has consistently worked to prevail for the rights of minorities, including poor Americans. Although Dr. King was only 39 years old when he was killed, it is not a stretch to say that had he lived, he would have stood up for the rights of homeless Americans. It is not clear where he would have stood for rights of gay, lesbian, bisexual, or transgender Americans, another concern which the ACLU has championed. What we do know is that his widow, Coretta Scott King, spoke in favor of gay and lesbian marriage equality. I want to read a quotation from Dr. King expressing what he felt was an important focus for our lives. An individual has not started living fully until they can rise above the narrow confines of individualistic concerns to the broader concerns of humanity. Every person must decide at some point whether they will walk in light of creative altruism or in the darkness of destructive selfishness. This is the judgment. Life's most persistent and urgent question is, what are you doing for others? Thank you.
As we welcome our governmental officials, I want to take special note that King's whole mission was to open the institutions, to allow equality within the system itself, not to destroy it, but to create equal opportunity. Welcome, City of Reading Mayor Francie Sullivan.
First of all, it's an honor to be invited to this. I have been coming for a number of years, but to be invited as the mayor is especially meaningful. A book club I belong to just read a book called The Invention of Wings, which I'd never heard of, but is a fictional novel based on historical facts and real people. And it's about a woman named Sarah Kiski, whose family were very large slave owners, and one of the slaves that worked for them. And she went on to become one of the first women who was an abolitionist, and out of that, as the fight went on, and she went on the street, she was denied the right to speak. She and her sister were shunned by some Quakers they had lived with because of their outspokenness. And from that, the suffragettes were born. I'm not sure that's exactly historically correct, but it was a real lesson to me about how discrimination, the fight for against discrimination goes on from one issue to another. We would no longer ever think of a woman not being allowed to speak in public or all those things. And I hope when Tristan is the President of the United States, or whatever great thing he's going to go on to be, that we no longer remember Dr. Martin Luther King as a black hero, but as an American hero, and as a great leader in our country, and his race being not the most important thing about him. So thank you all for coming. It's a pleasure to be here and to see such a big crowd this year. Thank you.
City of Reading Police Department, Reading PD, Chief Rob Paletti.
4. It's an honor to speak to you today as we honor an American hero in our country that had a simple dream. A simple dream that men are judged not by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I believe when you read history and you look today that we've come a long way. But if you read the news or watch the news, I think we still have a ways to go. But I believe that we as Reading, as a community, can take a leadership role in that. And we can set the example of how it should be. It's not hard to get to know each other and to learn about each other. All you have to do is extend a hand, shake it, and start to talk. If we can do that simple thing and get to know each other better, then we can lead the way in accomplishing that dream.
I'm honored to be invited. We've got our detective. He was here a second ago. Casey Day is here as well from the city of Anderson. And we just appreciate being involved and being included. And I want to talk about Dr. Martin Luther King had a special word one time. He said, "The ultimate measure of a man is not where he stands in moments of comfort and convenience, but where he stands in times of challenges and controversy." And I should have worn my glasses. Not long enough. He worked hard to change the world, and let's honor his work by working hard to change our world, however big or however small it is. And how do we do that? By, like I said, I need my glasses. By respecting, honoring, and just plain being kind to the ones around us. And I'll close with a simple Bible verse. It is known as the Golden Rule, but it is a Bible verse. It's in Luke 6:31. "Do unto others as you would have them do unto you." Thank you. Thank you.
A good standard to live by. A detective representing the Anderson Police Department, Casey Day.
Good morning. I just want to say that I think it's such a privilege and an honor for the community to get together once a year like this so that we can celebrate the diligent work and sacrifice by Dr. King. The most significant thing that comes to my mind this morning is how pivotal his work was in shaping the values that we should try to be living by every day. I've lived in Shasta County most of my life, with the exception of an enlistment in the U.S. Marine Corps. And in the Marine Corps, it was one of the greatest experiences of my life, but we had a saying that, we were all the color green, everybody bled red. So that was symbolic and significant that we are one people. I'll close with a comment regarding today's celebration. I think it's extremely important that these type of community gatherings continue. It gives us a chance for fellowship and the community a chance to grow. This room, hopefully within a couple of years, is going to be 3 times this size. It's been an honor to speak with you this morning. Thank you.
Supervisor Bill Chappelle, Shasta County Board of Supervisors for District 4. There he is.
Good morning, everybody. I just want to say on behalf of Shasta County Board of Supervisors, it's a pleasure to be able to represent them today in the remembrance of Martin Luther King. I had done some study and I was prepared for an hour and a half. I had all this work done. But when I showed up, she said, "You better not." But anyways, this is a day that we all should celebrate in a man's life, a great man, a man that was wanted equality for all. He actually was trying to work with the black population, but in the same vein of his speech, he was working for all the population. He was born January 19th, 1920, January 15th, 1929, excuse me. He died on April the 4th, 1968. He was born Michael King. And in January 1929, his father changed his name to the honor of the German, it was a reformer, Martin Luther King. Excuse me, Martin King. Martin King was responsible for the translation of the Bible from Hebrew and ancient Greek to German. Mr. King was a Baptist minister and became an activist early in his career. He led the 1955 Montgomery bus boycott, helped found the Southern Christian Leadership Conference, which is the SCLC, in 1957, and he served as first president. In 1962, he led an unsuccessful struggle against the segregation in Albany, Georgia. He organized nonviolent protests in Birmingham, Alabama. He helped organize the 1963 march in Washington, where he delivered his famous I Have a Dream speech. In 1964, he received the Nobel Peace Prize, which is interesting that he received the Peace Prize and he was assassinated for peace. In 1965, he and the SCLC helped organize the Selma to Montgomery marches, which Selma and Montgomery, they've got a movie now, so everybody should go out and see that. In 1966, he took the movement to Chicago, and he worked on segregated housing. In the final years of his life, he expanded his focus to include poverty and speak against the Vietnam War. He alienated his liberal allies with a 1967 speech titled Beyond Vietnam. He felt, because of the frequent death threats, and after the JFK assassination in 1963, he told his wife Greta that this was going to happen to me. He was assassinated on April 4th, 1968. Ironically, JFK also did not want the Vietnam War and was assassinated in 1963. Another ironic thing, in June of 1968, Robert F. Kennedy was assassinated 2 months after he gave a speech in which his aides suggested he shouldn't do about the assassination of Martin Luther King. His assassination was subject to great controversy. James Earl Ray was the first to be accused, but however, he was a scapegoat. He wasn't the man. A later court finally found out that the Memphis police and the federal agencies were a party to it. Martin Luther King was chief spokesman for nonviolent activism and in the civil rights movement. He was a great man. He was a great man. There's no doubt about it. And he also had a great vision, not only for his race, but all of America, and it cost him his life. If he would have lived, he would have become a great leader, not only in the black community, but with all people for equity, equality, excuse me. Thank you very much.
I want to invite forward Shasta County Sheriff Tom Bosenko.
Good morning. Thank you all for being here. Our nation was founded on human equality. Bill of Rights gives and protects everyone with certain rights. Our nation became divided over human rights. And in 1863, President Lincoln, in the Emancipation Proclamation, set the slaves free. He directed the government and the military to protect their freedom. Later that same year, Lincoln gave the Gettysburg Address. He reiterated the principles of human equality and espoused in the Declaration of Independence that a new nation conceived in liberty, dedicated to the proposition that all men are created equal. Certainly as a society, it wasn't perfect then, nor is it perfect now, as we've seen events across the nation. There remain biases, prejudices, and inequalities. Dr. King recognized this in his I Have a Dream speech. While free, there remains inequalities. He said that we cannot wallow in despair. We cannot turn back. We must move forward towards his dream of freedom and equality for all. And at some point, everyone come together, join hands, and sing to be free at last. We haven't arrived there yet, but we've made significant progress and improvements. We cannot give up and wallow and complain. We must move forward, work together in fulfilling his dream. Thank you.
I want to invite again to the podium the Vice Mayor of Shasta Lake City, Lori Chapman-Cyphers.
What a wonderful crowd here today. I want to first thank you all for getting up early and making this journey out. It's such a wonderful event. I've come in many years past, and this is quite a wonderful showing. I really appreciate that. So does our community. I have a proclamation from our mayor, Greg Watkins. A proclamation of the mayor of the city of Shasta Lake recognizing January 19th, 2015 as Martin Luther King Jr. Day. Whereas on January 15th, 1929, Martin Luther King Jr. was born, and whereas Martin Luther King dedicated his life to ending the injustice of racism and a vision of a land guided by love instead of hatred, and by acceptance instead of intolerance. And whereas throughout his brief life, Martin Luther King Jr. led a valiant struggle for true equality, often confronted with powerful opposition, and ultimately losing his life for the cause of freedom. And whereas Martin Luther King Jr. Day is a federally acclaimed holiday to be observed on January 19th, 2015. Now therefore be it proclaimed by the mayor on behalf of the City Council of the City of Shasta Lake that this day, January 19th, be a day to remember and celebrate the life of Martin Luther King Jr. We're honored to be a part of this. The City of Shasta Lake is grateful, and we're thankful that you're all here and we're all partners. Have a wonderful day.
In honor of nonviolence, we welcome to the podium Jean King, Executive Director for One Safe Place.
Thank you so much for having me here today. I'm honored. I, of course, grew up and was in college in the 60s, so he was a hero at that time, and just an honor today to be here. I want to talk about his concept of beloved community. Dr. Martin Luther King popularized the expression and advanced it with a deeper meaning, which has captured the imagination of people of goodwill all over the world. For Dr. King, the beloved community was a realistic, achievable goal that could be attained by a critical mass of people committed to and trained in the philosophy and methods of nonviolence. Dr. King's beloved community is justice for all people. As Dr. King said, injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. He felt that justice could not be parceled out to individuals or groups, but was the birthright of every human being. I have fought too long and hard against segregated public accommodations to end up segregating my moral concerns. He said, justice is indivisible. At a victory rally following the announcement of a favorable U.S. Supreme Court decision desegregating the seats on Montgomery's buses, Dr. King said, the end is reconciliation. The end is redemption. The end is the creation of the beloved community. It is this type of spirit and this type of love that can transform opponents into friends. It is this type of understanding, goodwill, that will transport the deep gloom of the old age into the exuberant gladness of the new age. It is this love which will bring about miracles in the heart of men. Dr. King advocated 6 principles of nonviolence. Principle 1, nonviolence is a way of life for courageous people. It is active, nonviolent resistance to evil. It is aggressive spiritually, mentally, and emotionally. Principle 2, nonviolence seeks to win friendship and understanding. Principle 3, nonviolence seeks to defeat injustice, not people. Nonviolence recognizes that evildoers are also victims and are not evil people. The nonviolent resistor seeks to defeat evil, not people. Principle 4, nonviolence holds that suffering can educate and transform. Principle 5, nonviolence chooses love instead of hate. Principle 6, nonviolence believes that the universe is on the side of justice. Nonviolence believes that God is a God of justice. The beloved community is equally applicable to victims of family violence and sexual assault. We must join together and overcome. Injustice anywhere is a threat to justice everywhere. Thank you.
Education plays a major role in the development of a beloved community. Recognize and invite to the podium Joe Weiss, Shasta College, President Superintendent.
I think it's altogether fitting on this day, 86 years after the birth of Martin Luther King Jr., that we're gathered together to honor the memory and the man and the ideals he represents, which I see as peace, justice, and freedom. You mentioned at the beginning the new memorial that opened in 2011 in Washington, D.C., and I was privileged to be able to take my family there about 18 months ago. And I learned that it's only one of 4 memorials on the mall in Washington that's not dedicated to a president, and the first to an African American. And one of the 14 quotes from Martin Luther King Jr. on the memorial is as follows: "Make a career of humanity. Commit yourself to the noble struggle for equal rights. You will make a greater person of yourself, a greater nation of your country, and a finer world to live in." So I ask that we all recommit ourselves to this noble struggle for equal rights. Thank you.
Dr. King honored and advocated for supportive diversity. Representing the Life Center, Local Indians for Education, I invite Rod Lindsay forward.
Majuk says, in my Tuolumne Miwok language, that's welcome and thank you. And also the Cherokee people, Oseo, the Wintu people, Hestum, the Alaska people, Aqua, welcome you to this umacha, this house. In Wintu language, they say Pelayan Boots, which means our house, our place, where we come together and we gather and we talk. So many cool words were said through expression this morning, and I appreciate that. I want to thank Lynn for her captaining this particular day, this event, to start it off for the Martin Luther King Celebration Day. As someone said, we're come together to celebrate this day. We do, but we should be celebrating Dr. King every day. In my community where I come from, I work specifically, but being specific also, encourages outside the realms of being very specific to our Native American community. I work with our youth. Today, I'm very honored. We have a couple of young people here in our gathering today, and I want to thank them for being here. My grandson, Isaac, Wintu and Miwok and Paiute, Hispanic young man, 11 years old. This is his 6th year in this event, and I appreciate him coming this morning. Today should be a day that we should actually still be in school learning more about Dr. King and celebrating in that sense. But we as messenger people today have heard many things by many people in different ways. coming from different parts of our community to say the same thing. We honor and celebrate this day. And we appreciate this man, Dr. King, who says, I have a dream. So let me go back to the word specific. In my working with our Native American people last week, our young people, we have an after-school program at the Life Center 3 days a week. One of those days we talked about this day. We talked about Dr. King. We talked about coming on this march and what we're going to do. So later on at the courthouse, we'll have some more of our young people. They'll march to the MLK Center. And we're also going to do a drumming song in honor of Dr. King. Dr. King's here. Isaac Lowe's here. I appreciated this opportunity to be able to speak today in reference to continue the collaboration. It doesn't stop this morning when we leave here. Think about the words that you said. Think about the proclamation that was read from the city. Think about the mayors and the police departments and the sheriff's departments that said, we're going to beat this thing. Every day we have to deal with what Dr. King has given us the message to, injustices. Over these last few months, we've had a lot of turbulence in this country. And even today, as we speak, this early in the morning, someplace in this world, something is going on that Dr. King was talking about that he wanted to change. I love the term beloved community in our hearts. If we think about equality, and what does beloved community mean? Advocating respect, honoring our elders, appreciating our youth, working for organizations that want to do something and achieve something in our lives, and for our young people to establish something good for our youth. That's the generation coming. When people talk about we need to help the next generation is my son, my daughters. Their next generation is their sons and their daughters. When we speak about generations, today my family has 5 generations living today. I'm so happy. And I'm proud to be here to listen to each and every one of you speak about this great man. He's given us all a dream. Let's take it, share it, send the message. Don't be afraid. That's right. Reach out. Hug somebody, shake their hand, and thank them. Because it's going to take all of us to be able to supply the need and the courage and be good advocates for everybody. Oh.
King also advocated for support of diversity of faith. Representing Shasta County Interfaith Forum, I invite to the podium Reverend Dr. Ann Corrin.
It's been a wonderful privilege to watch each one of you come up and speak and to think about the great legacy of Dr. Martin Luther King Jr. that lives in this community as each of us reach out and not only lift up his legacy on a day, but live our lives in that, as has been suggested. And it's my huge privilege to be working with a group of people that live that legacy that in a way that is so important in these days. We know that divisions among faith communities is one of the most powerful underminers of a beloved community that is very, very alive today. And I am so pleased that we have an incredibly active and powerful interfaith forum here in Reading. And I'd like to just acknowledge those among us that are here. And I'm just going to name the communities as we have Quaker, please stand, Quaker, Jewish, the Center for Spiritual Living, the Unitarians, and we have, I'm trying to look around too, the Native American, we have the Buddhist, we have Muslim, we have Baha'i, the Latter-day Saints, Church of Latter-day Saints, Sikhs, and Islam, yeah, and various Christian groups. You may not understand. Thank you so much, and thank you for being my cohorts on this this journey to help bring all of us together at such a deep and essential level of our beings as human beings. And I just want to lift up the work that each of us do just by waking up in the morning and going about the work that we do, and the work that happens to break down barriers between faith communities here in Reading that can move then to throughout the country and throughout the world. As we lift up King's legacy today, let us each lift up his legacy every day of our lives in how we speak, how we act, and how we gather. Thank you.
Tribal government, Jason Hart, representing Reading Rancheria.
I just want to start off saying it's an honor to be here today. Thank you guys very much for inviting us to come down. I represent Reading Rancheria, the chairman for the tribe. I have a few words today that I worked on, and I will keep it short and sweet. So, as we gather today in memory of Dr. King's life and vision, each of us can recall some line from his famous speech, "I have a dream." Dr. King gave the speech at the time when many could only dream. Often they could not vote, they could not find a job, could not go to a real school. For Dr. King, that speech was only the beginning of a hard path ahead. A path that led to police beatings for some, to jail for others, to injuries, and even death for some whose only offense was going to church, marching, or holding a sign. Dr. King gave his speech in the nation's capital in 1963, over 50 years ago. At that time, he gave hope to many who had lost hope, to blacks across the South, to others across the country who had only been denied justice and equal rights to schools and housing. To my mother and her family here in Reading, Dr. King's speech came only 2 years after the federal government had wrongfully terminated our reservation. The federal government in 1961 had told my family, "You are no longer Indians. The government will no longer keep the promises that were made to you." At a difficult time for my family, Dr. King's speech was a message of hope. And so Dr. King's dream became a dream for many millions across this country who had only been denied justice and equity, or equality. As we gather today to look back over the last 50 years since the dream speech, many of us can see a path that we or our parents have followed. Today this nation offers more equality, more justice than it did 50 years ago, and yet Dr. King's dreams remains only a dream for many. Dr. King's dreams was a vision for the future, not just for the 1960s, but for all time. When Dr. King spoke at the nation's capital, he spoke for not only black people, he spoke for people of all races. He spoke not only for voting rights, political justice, and I always get this word wrong, disintegrating schools. He also spoke for economic justice. So today, let's look forward to the next 50 years. Let's ask ourselves, what can we do to help fulfill Dr. King's dreams? What can we do together here in Reading to make a better world for those who all and only have dreams? Thank you guys for inviting us down, and a few words from Reading Rancheria Tribal Government.
Media. It plays a significant role not only in our history, but in our future. So I welcome editor from the Record Searchlight, Silas Lyons.
It strikes me that the Record Searchlight for the past few years has sponsored a local recognition program called the 20 Under 40. Dr. King would have been eligible still to be a member of that group when he was assassinated. It's absolutely remarkable what this man accomplished in so short a time. It's also remarkable that we are all still here identifying with what he said 50 years ago, sometimes more than 50 years ago. And why is that? Listening to everybody who spoke before me, it struck me that there are a couple of big reasons for that. One was his inclusiveness and the inclusiveness of his vision, how broad it was, that it could reach down through the years like this and speak to so many different people right now. And the other is that the things of which he spoke remain unfinished business. And so we still have a long ways to go, and we still have to continue coming back to those principles. But I wanted to speak briefly and personally about a way in which Dr. King has provided guidance to a white newspaper editor in a small town 50 years after he spoke those great words. As we talk today, there is a debate raging across the world about the proper response to a terrorist attack on a satirical newspaper in Paris. And there are many who have argued quite forcefully that the only proper response is for the press throughout the civilized world to join in the mockery of the Prophet Muhammad. Even in small communities like ours, people like me have had to explain our position on this, and I've gone back to Dr. King to find guidance on issues like this and others. And what I see is that this is a question of answering extremism with extremism. The idea is that you cannot be strong in the face of a threat unless you take an eye for an eye. And what Dr. King taught is that extremists must not be battled on their own terms. The strongest leader can be the one with the moderate ideals. The way of peace need not be the way of pacification. That is a lasting legacy of the philosophy of nonviolence. A couple of years before the famous Dream speech, Dr. King gave a speech at the commencement of Lincoln University. It was a speech in which he said the great words that we are caught in an inescapable web of mutuality. But he also said this: we realize that the end is pre-existent in the means. In the long run of history, destructive means cannot bring about constructive ends. I believe that's just as true today. Dr. King, as we've heard several people talk about this morning, he and his fellow civil rights leaders, because he certainly didn't go it alone, defeated the extremists by capturing the middle. His great genius was the ability to redefine the battlefield so that all the soldiers were suddenly on his side. No longer was the African American fighting a lonely fight against the white establishment. All men and women who believed in America's great promise of liberty and justice for all were fighting together to bring it to its full potential. So that model to me isn't just morally superior. The stakes remain extremely high, and it's still the most practical path to victory. Thanks.
We have a very special poem. I want to ask Tristan to come forward to read that poem. And the grandson, come on up here. The grandson of Isaac is going to be ringing the bell today, Tyler. So I wanted to ask Tyler, Russell, the family. Isaac. Is it going to be Isaac? Okay. Isaac, can you come forward too and hear the poem? And family, you can come with him. You're part of our legacy. We have just about 2 minutes here. Let's read your poem. Tristan, right?
Freedom, freedom, let it ring, said Dr. King. Let us live in harmony, peace and love for you and me. Freedom, freedom, let it ring, said Dr. King.
Thank you, Tristan. Thank you very much. We're going to listen to the last 6 minutes of his speech, I Have a Dream, which he's renowned for. Little side note, he had a speech planned. Mahalia Jackson was in the crowd, and she said to him, "Tell them about the dream, Martin." And he began to speak extemporaneously, and it is what he is most known for. So I invite you, if you're comfortable, to close your eyes, listen, and right at 9 o'clock, the bell will sound.
One day, this nation will rise up and live out the true meaning of its creed. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal. I have a dream that one day on the red hills sons of former slaves and the sons of former slave owners will they be able to sit down together at the table of brotherhood. I have a dream that one day, even the state of Mississippi, a state sweltering with the heat of injustice, sweltering with the heat of oppression, will be transformed into an oasis of freedom and justice. I have a dream. My 4 little children will one day live in a nation where they will not be judged by the color of their skin, but by the content of their character. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day, down in Alabama, with its vicious races, with its governor having his lips dripping with the words of interposition and nullification. One day right there in Alabama, little black boys and black girls will be able to join hands with little white boys and white girls as sisters and brothers. I have a dream today. I have a dream that one day every valley shall be exalted. Every hill and mountain shall be made low, the rough places will be made plain, and the crooked places will be made straight. And the word of the Lord shall be revealed, and all flesh shall see it together. This is our hope. This is the thing that I go back to the South with. With this faith, we will be able to hew out of the mountain of despair a stone of hope. With this faith, we will be able to transform the jangling discords of our nation into a beautiful symphony of brotherhood. With this faith, we will be able to work together, to pray together, to struggle together, to go to jail together, to stand up for freedom together, knowing that we will be free one day. This will be the day when all of God's children be able to sing with new meaning, my country tears of thee. Sweet land of liberty of thee I sing. Land where my fathers died, land of the pilgrims tried. From every mountainside, let freedom reign. If America is to be a great nation, this must become true. And so let freedom reign. From the prodigious hilltops of New Hampshire, let freedom reign. From the mighty mountains of New York, let freedom reign. From the hiking Alleghenies of Pennsylvania, let freedom reign. From the snow-capped Rockies of Colorado, let freedom reign. From the curvaceous slopes of California. But not only that, let freedom reign from Stone Mountain of Georgia. Let freedom reign from Lookout Mountain of Tennessee. Let freedom reign from every hill and molehill of Mississippi, from every mountainside. Let freedom reign when we get happy. When we allow freedom reign, when we let it reign from every village and every hamlet, from every state and every city, we will be able to speed up that day when all of God's children, black men and white men, Jews and Gentiles, Protestants and Catholics, will be able to join hands and sing in the words of the old Negro spiritual, free at last.